So, for my discussion this week, I want to talk about modification of culture theory. There is a question in chapter 14, which is number 1, that I want to touch on. But first, I want to talk about what this theory is and a little bit of its history. So, diving right in, the commodification of culture theory is a study of what happens when culture is mass-produced. It also discusses the competition with locally based culture. And the book goes on to talk about how before media had any impact, so it goes back to medieval ages, it discusses how everything was region-based. But as media began to grow and develop, suddenly you had to look into other regions. So this led to people having this misinterpretation of different ideas and being able to lead them into a different idea because now they have the knowledge that they didn't have before. Although there has been some positive impacts of this because you can have more of the open mind to be able to experience different versions of different cultures. There has been negative impacts of it. One of the negative impacts it talks about in the book is how elites have been able to take control and kind of develop culture in the way they want it to be seen in certain areas. And one of the main problems that it discusses, which is what I'm going to cover with my question, is how it has kept the media industry, pretty male dominant and kind of makes it where women don't have the ability to gain any power or a voice in it. This can include like the presentation of just like the image of a weak woman and the romanticizing of dating violence and such. And so going on to the question, it asks if I agree with these misrepresentations like that have come about. Like it asks if I have seen them and if I've seen anything that's problematic. Personally, I don't have anything that like it hit home and I think is super problematic. I know there are some of those out there, but I just can't think of anything that comes to my mind at this exact moment. I do think that this does happen a lot. One of the main things that it mentioned was the romanticizing of dating violence and stuff like that, or just overall toxic romantic relationships. I'm actually doing a research paper on a different class that's covering romantic relationships, so I have seen this impact in media since, again, that's what I'm covering. And I do think that can be problematic because it sets up this image that, especially nowadays, it sets up this image that all those things that happen aren't as problematic as they actually are, and the relationship's fine because you're seeing it on TV as this romantic relationship that looks normal, but really it might not be. It does say how can you change these things, and I think that's just speaking up against it. I really don't see any other way to fight it other than speaking up against it, and I think that actually this theory itself can be used to fight against it because, again, it stops the idea of the culture in this one area is correct and that's what you live by. No, because now with social media, everyone has this voice that can talk against these and combat that idea of any misinterpretations of gender or of racial representation. So I think it's interesting that although the commodification of culture is kind of bringing up these problems, that I think that's the main thing that you could use to combat it and do your research on it and use media to fight against those local based cultures. So yeah, that's all I have for this week.